The first moments of presentations are critical. Let's look at the 5 best ways to open. My name is Alex Lyon, and I'm here to provide professional development tips for your very next meeting. Today we're going to talk about presentation skills, and it's a critical area for leaders because people will often see someone present, and if you do well, they'll think, oh, that person's a good leader. That's the way people translate it. And the first moments of presentations are really key. It's that attention getter, is what they call it. That moment you grab your audience's attention and you draw their interest in to the heart of the message you're about to share. And there are some good ways to start and some bad ways. We're going to look at the top 5 ways to start presentations. So the first is a story, and I mean a brief story like 30 seconds to 60 seconds. It can be humorous, it can be fun, lighthearted, it can be serious. Whatever matches the tone of the central message you're about to share is appropriate. And it also should, in its content, drive toward the heart of the message. For example, my pastor the other day told a story about how when he was young, he was driving this truck on the freeway. It was a cherry picker, huge truck with the company logo on the side, and he missed his turn, and so he had to swerve over the grass median. And it was a humorous story, but it drove right to the point he was trying to make, which is about difficult choices. And so it worked really well. So a good story, a brief story, is a strong way to start your presentations. The second way is a statistic or fact. Ideally, a statistic that's startling, something a little unexpected. Like I heard one the other day when learning about personal finance, and that is during college, students have about $800 worth of credit card debt, but by the time they are in the working world, they give about $8,000 worth of credit card debt. Now to me, that's pretty startling. And if you were going to open a presentation about personal finance or perhaps college students, whatever the topic is, that is an example of a good statistic because it really draws your attention to the issue. So as you're doing your research, you'll probably come across some interesting facts, and you should consider some of those as introductory or attention-getting material for your opening. The third way is rhetorical questions. Rhetorical question, as they say, is not necessarily a question that needs to be answered. However, you could ask your listeners to raise their hands if they have ever thought that. For example, you say, by show of hands, how many of you have ever, and then you insert your question. I think it's a great way to start because it instantly gets your audience participating and bought in and on board with the message you're sharing. I think it's also best to structure this so you ask 2, possibly 3 questions in a row, so it adds a little momentum to the message. And that way it's not just a one-off kind of question, it's something that draws them in. The fourth way to open is an illustration. You should consider something visual that shows your audience the point that you're trying to make. I once saw a speaker, for example, line up stacks of cookies to illustrate differences in numbers. Now, cookies are much more interesting to look at than just a number, and so it's a great visual representation. Sometimes people will use an object as a representation, a visual illustration of what they're trying to get across. Any way you can do that, maybe a visual aid, even something on the screen could be a powerful way to start. Something that helps the visual learners in your audience to get on board with what you're about to say can be a really great way to start. And the last way is quotations. Now you can start with a well-known quotation, but I don't think the well-known quotations are always best. It's true that Abraham Lincoln and Einstein, they all said some amazing things, but the problem with using a common quotation is that people have probably already heard it, and it might not have the impact that you're trying to have. I think it's best if you look for a unique or offbeat quotation. For example, I saw a speaker recently give a quote from Bruce Lee to begin his presentation. His presentation wasn't about martial arts, it was about making mistakes. And Bruce Lee has a great quotation about making mistakes, and it was a powerful way to start because I had never heard it before. But it was a powerful way to open. So these are the top 5 ways I recommend starting your presentations. I want to give you 2 additional suggestions for using attention getters effectively. And the first suggestion is to make sure it's the very first thing out of your mouth. So a lot of times we get introduced and then we might fill in with a whole bunch of other things. And then in a moment or 2, we finally get to our message. But I think the first thing out of your mouth should be your attention getter. You might say thank you to the applause or thank you briefly, a couple of seconds, and then you pause and you go into your attention getter. The second recommendation to using these attention getters is I think it's great to combine these together. You might use, for example, a rhetorical question with a statistic, or a quote with a rhetorical question. There's some art to this, but you can weave them together and play around till you get the right combination. But if you combine more than one, then you're almost guaranteed to have a powerful opening that really does do the job and gain people's attention. So like I said, presentations are often considered a leadership skill, and I highly recommend developing these every chance you get. And it's why I created Communication Coach. I created it to help rising leaders like yourself take your leadership and communication skills to the next level. So if you're interested in ongoing tips in this area, please subscribe to the channel, post your comments and questions below. If you have other ideas about videos you'd like to see me work on in the future, then go ahead and we'll start a conversation about that. So thanks, God bless, and I hope you get to use these tips at your very next meeting.